Hello, I'm Henry Mack, and welcome to this month's Viewpoint. The immigration debate is never without controversy, and recently, President Barack Obama delayed action on his own ideas for immigration reform until after the midterm election. Archbishop Thomas Wensky of Miami, a very strong advocate for national reform, has called for us to, quote, fix our broken immigration system, to stop the exploitation and marginalization of millions of people, end quote. And according to a preliminary Pew Research Center estimate, as of March 2013, there were 11.3 million unauthorized immigrants living in the United States. Aside from the political debate, there are serious ethical issues at work. What do we owe our immigrants? Who is owed amnesty and who isn't? And how do we determine? Here to discuss the ethical issues surrounding the immigration crisis are Christine Reese, Director of the Human Rights Institute at St. Thomas University, and Deborah Sasha, Director of International Solidarity for Human Rights. Thank you both for joining me. A controversial topic, immigration reform, especially as a result of the influx of children I think, over this past summer, as well as greater attention drawn to the number of deaths that occur as a result of people wanting employment, I suppose, in the United States. So we want to tackle today the ethics of immigration. Let's put the politics aside, and I want to try and understand the various ethical arguments, the moral implications of this debate. Your organization in particular has a very passionate viewpoint on this topic. Could you start us off by talking about some of the rights and the ethics that we owe these immigrants?
Yes, thank you for the invitation, and I'm honored to be with you today to talk about human rights, which is my specialty or my field, my passion. And I want to start this conversation with a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt that says, "Where, after all, do universal human rights begin? In small places, close to home, so close and so small that they cannot be seen in any maps of the world, yet they are the world of the individual person, the neighborhood he lives in, the school or college he attends, the factory, farm, or office where he works. Such are the places where every man, woman, and child seeks equal justice, equal opportunity, equal dignity without discrimination. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning anywhere." So it's a matter of human rights to resolve the problem of immigration.
Mm-hmm. I guess, what's the controversy here? Why are so many people divided on the topic of immigration reform?
I think it is because they don't know the human rights, because the human rights are inalienable
Yes, inalienable
rights, inherited from the moment you are born. If you know your rights, if you exercise the rights, and United States is signatory of many pacts and covenants about human rights. So, and there are 193, I believe, nations signatory of human rights in the United Nations. They have to abort this problem in a humanly way.
Right. Clearly immigration reform is needed. It's just a matter of reaching the end. We see the end. We all agree on the end goal of some type of reform. The system is broken, and the enforcement-only policy is not working, which has been the policy of the past 3-4 presidents. But why the controversy then? Why do you think this is such an issue?
I think that the media does a great job of polarizing. I think there's a lot of fear. I think people don't understand really what's at stake. I think there's a lot of individuals out there saying, I don't want them to take my jobs. We're not in the best economy. We haven't been in the best economy for a while. We don't want them to be coming into our land and taking our rights or our things, and they don't realize that that's not really the issue. It's through education and through empowering everyone and informing them of really what we're talking about here that's the way to kind of get around that bias of not wanting to have immigration reform. A lot of people fear it. A lot of people just fear it.
For what reasons? For what reasons?
They think
they think it threatens...
It threatens their jobs, their livelihood, the way they live their life. You hear people make comments sometimes saying, oh, well, you know, if they come into this country, I want them to speak English. I don't want to have to adjust to the way they live life. And it's always a they versus us. And I think that's where we get into trouble. I think we need to look at why people come to this country, who comes into this country, what laws we have in place to either effectuate a legalized version of entry versus what kind of pushes individuals out of despair and in a moment of just desperation to just jump in and violate those laws.
So let me play devil's advocate here for a minute and try to understand the perspective that the legalization of immigration somehow threatens our livelihood, our well-being, primarily from a jobs perspective, I suppose. Yes, these people have rights. Yes, everybody is endowed with inherent dignity, value, worth, etc., which pretty much I think we can all concede. The issue is when one person threatens the property or the well-being of another, and that these immigrants are somehow doing that, legal or illegal or otherwise, that they are impinging upon my well-being, my private property, my own, I don't know, my own right to pursue my own well-being in my country legally, where these are illegals. We are a nation of laws. This is a nation of, it's the rule of law. So then, so how would,
well,
how would
I
you,
think
how
we
would
were
you...
discussing that the term illegal for us is not...
Yeah, we were generally looking at the word undocumented.
Undocumented, yes. Because if you look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, in its Article 13, everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state. Everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to the country.
Even at the expense of our own well-being and our own resources, our own jobs, our own...
That's a story of humanity. People migrate.
What gives them the right to take away our right to private property by having to pay or at least support illegal immigrants through some sort of taxation or welfare system? Eventually it comes out of my pocket to have to support
what about
these
if they become, legally hired or whatever? Are they taking your rights? No, they are becoming part of this country. They are paying taxes. I mean, if you let them become legally established in this country, there are going to be how do you say?
Part of the fabric of our society.
Yes.
And I think that's what we have to look at. We have to look at that we have a system that's clearly broken. Enforcement, we've thrown a lot of money into it, and we have the numbers to show that it hasn't worked. So now we have a population that's estimated at 11 million, which might actually be fairly low, that are here in this country undocumented. The majority of which are law-abiding, hard-working individuals. I'm not saying everyone. You can't generalize, because we have people that don't follow the laws everywhere, of all nationalities, of all creeds, any way you look at it. So when we look at a law, and yes, one of the great things we have about the United States is our laws. That is the basis. We have to have borders. Every country has a right because it has duties to its citizens, and it has responsibilities that it has to do to its citizens. You need to look at the fact that they have to have laws. But when those laws are no longer effectuating some sort of like an organized and a ethical and a just result, we need to look at fixing that.
Sure.
And so I think that's what the point we're at right now with immigration. We need to look at what we have, and we have to adjust it, because society has changed. Our world has changed. The reality is we have 11 million, and that's a low estimate, undocumented individuals that have children that go to school with your children, that shop at your markets, work amongst us, drive amongst us, bank with us. We need to find a way to integrate that and to make it work for our country. The reality is there's jobs that are hard to fill. I don't see huge lines of people.
You were talking about an example.
Yeah, I was explaining an example. We get phone calls from chicken processing plants. They can't find workers. They're looking for refugees that are documented and are willing to do the job. That's immigrants. Now, refugees are obviously legal immigrants. They came in through a legal process. But it's just an example of jobs that don't want to be done here locally that we need to have people imported to do.
It's hard to reconcile. I'm going to back up just a bit.
Okay, go ahead.
Well said. It's hard to reconcile our duties to our own American citizens by the establishment of borders and by the establishment of such laws that protect the homeland with the fundamental right of everyone to travel freely, to seek out and pursue their own well-being. What you just read, Article
13.
Article 13 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights.
Yes.
How do you square those two? I don't understand how you can say on the one hand everybody has a fundamental right to that, but yet on the other hand we do have a duty and a right to protect our borders.
But the United States is signatory of this declaration
Doesn't make it right.
in UN.
Doesn't make it right. So what?
So how are you gonna ask for, human rights are not pocket chips that you put in front when it's convenient for you and you take out when it's not convenient for you. You have, if you believe in human rights, you have.
Yeah, but here you have a problem though, because
then you cannot claim to other countries, what they are doing wrong, saying you are violating human rights, because you are too.
And I think that you're correct. There comes a point where you're looking at the two different issues and you're trying to marry them.
You have a conflict of rights.
You have a conflict of rights. However, within the rights of a country is to make laws which allow for the travel of individuals in a ethical, just manner. And I think that's what we're looking at. Of course, a country has the right to do screenings or to have certain rules regarding who enters the country and who doesn't. If you're on the terrorist watch list, you're not going to get in. If you have a large criminal record and they can check that, you may not be able to get in. A country has a right to protect its borders, but it needs to do so in a way that is just and effective.
And I think we are not talking about opening the borders because, as you said, every country has the right to have their own laws and everything. We are talking about fixing what is established, what we have.
Okay.
If I want to come to
I still don't get it.
If I want to come to the United States, I have to do it in a lawful way. If I want to immigrate to here, I studied here a long time ago in 1982. I graduated from Denver, the University of Denver, Colorado, and I went back to my country, and I've been visiting the United States with a tourist visa and everything for many times. When I decided I want to stay here,
Right.
I went through a lawful way.
Ethical issues surrounding the immigration crisis are Christine Reese, director of the Human Rights Institute at St. Thomas University, and Deborah Sasha, director of International Solidarity for Human Rights. Thank you both for joining me. A controversial topic, immigration reform, especially as a result of the influx of children, I think, over this past summer, as well as has a very passionate viewpoint on this topic. Could you start us off by talking about some of the rights and the ethics that we owe these immigrants?
Yes, thank you for the invitation, and I'm honored to be with you today to talk about human rights, which is my specialty, or my field, my passion. And I want to start
attention drawn to the number of deaths that occur as a result of people wanting employment, I suppose, in the United States. So we want to tackle today the ethics of immigration. Let's put the politics aside, and I want to try and understand the various ethical arguments, the moral implications of this debate. Your organization in particular, millions of people, end quote. And according to a preliminary Pew Research Center estimate, as of March 2013, there were 11.3 million unauthorized immigrants living in the United States. Aside from the political debate, there are serious ethical issues at work. What do we owe our immigrants? Who is owed amnesty and who isn't? And how do we determine? Here to discuss Hello, I'm Henry Mack, and welcome to this month's Viewpoint. The immigration debate is never without controversy, and recently President Barack Obama delayed action on his own ideas for immigration reform until after the midterm election. Archbishop Thomas Wensky of Miami, a very strong advocate for national reform, has called for us to, quote, fix our broken immigration system, to stop the exploitation and marginalization of